Hi everyone, it's Noah Coughlin, founder and CEO of BLDUP. Welcome back to The Big Dig, presented by BLDUP in Nahant, Massachusetts, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. We are excited to introduce a new series of episodes that will delve into the nuts and bolts of projects throughout Boston's hottest neighborhoods. On these Big Dig project spotlights, you will hear firsthand how developers large and small are bringing projects from concept through delivery. On today's episode, we are discussing the upcoming 114-unit condo project, the Freeport in South Boston. Joining us to discuss this project are the developer, Patrick Dooling of Navem Partners, along with the architect, Dartagnan Brown of Embarc.
Hi everyone, Megan Doherty here with BLDUP. Excited to talk about the Freeport today in South Boston. Let's meet our guests. Pat?
Hi, great to be here. It's Pat Dooling with Navem Partners. We're a Boston-based real estate investment management and developer focused on high-value add and development projects in all of Boston's core markets.
Great. And Dartagnan?
Hey, Dartagnan Brown, owner of Embarc. We are a Boston-based architectural firm founded in 2011. We do a range of projects anywhere from boutique brownstones up to large-scale multifamily, anywhere from 1 to 300 units in size. We're proud to, I think as you mentioned earlier, just have a cool influence in the city. We do a lot with the zoning and BPDA, and this area is special to us. We actually worked on the building next door, the ARIA, so it's nice to kind of continue down the block.
So this project was originally approved by the BPDA in 2017. Pat, what pushed your team to purchase this opportunity this past January?
Sure. We, as a developer, we're constantly canvassing neighborhoods and particularly the most exciting ones in Boston. So we've tracked projects in South Boston, all parts of South Boston for a long time. We have one other active project there currently. And in fact, through that project, got to know the owner of the site directly over the span of about a 6-month time period. So it was a combination really of our kind of deep market research, looking at things like, other buildings currently on the market and in development, the zoning overlays that the city has created for that corridor, as well as then kind of marrying that with a great relationship directly with the seller that allowed us to purchase the transaction directly and start with a great foundation in terms of the planning that Mark Edwards and his family created as the business owner and property owner. He did a lot of work, frankly, more than most probably could even do as a business owner there. And so we had a great start, and then we're able to marry that with our skill as a developer over the last 6 months to really get the project to the point where we could start building it.
So at this point, when did you bring in Embarc to the project, and what have they been, helping you guys with?
Sure. That was really one of the number of steps we took post-closing was to supplement kind of the architectural team. The architect of record originally was Pisani and Associates. He's a great individual who still works on the project with us. He worked with the Edwards family to do the original design. And ultimately, we felt like for a few different reasons, we wanted Embarc involved. Firstly, they're a deeply experienced architectural firm with a lot of great product, both in development, already sold, and coming online in the city. So we had a ton of respect for their work and a ton of respect for the other developers, frankly, that they're working for. Secondarily, I think we felt that supplementing the team here was the right thing to do to accelerate the project into construction. There's a fair amount of work that still has to go into the project after you get approved plans to get to something that you can actually build and sell. And we felt like Embarc, given their size and strength and capacity, could really do that quickly and really efficiently for us.
And if I may add, I think for us it was a nice project to come on, not only to meet you and your team, but we've had a great working relationship with Pisani and his office. We, again, as I mentioned, present a lot to the zoning board that he was the architect on. So in front of him, we'll, periodically every month bring projects to his board and the commission for approval. So I think the fact that he made a great connection between all of us meant a lot to us.
Okay. So what not changes or additions have you guys made to the plans now that you've been working on it?
So I think we're early in the process right now, so we're kind of taking the drawings that went through the permitting and just based on our experience in kind of the South Boston market and this kind of condo product, we're working through to flush through all of the units, different sizes, what we see buyers at this price point wanting in a condo. So that's, I think, where our kind of expertise comes in. We're working on another couple projects right in the neighborhood where we're helping push price points. And so from that, I think what Pat and his team saw is we have that kind of ability to really take a deep dive into the market and understand to help elevate this product because, everybody, and you guys are so well versed with the Boston market, there's so much getting built and developed that our goal as architects is always to help our clients set their product apart. So where we can come in and really fine-tune layouts, understand how our user is going to move through the building, we're going to take that kind of skill set and knowledge and apply it to this project.
And I think one of the things Dartagnan said was the word product, which is kind of how we as developers think, about what we're delivering. Ultimately, that's a big piece of us taking it from an approved set of plans to what's going to sell in the market. And there's a whole strategy around that that starts with, our work even before closing. Who is the buyer universe that's going to be there, or renter universe, as it might be. And targeting that specific individual. What are the other options they have in the market, and what are they seeing in terms of finishes, amenities, and all the things that go into creating. We use the term product because they're buyers, into a community. They need a sense of place and where they're going to live. They want a certain style. They might need a certain amenity, you name it. And so we spend just a ton of time on our side trying to define that, both before purchasing the property as well as through the construction timeline, into marketing and selling it.
So you had talked, Pat, earlier when we were speaking about the unit sizes and how you're looking at smaller unit sizes. Why do you think that's so important for this project?
Sure. We start from what do we think the market needs and who the buyers are. And, the good news is over the next 10 years, this corridor in South Boston is going to be an incredibly exciting place to develop product and to live and work. It's, I think probably listeners will be shocked to see the number of projects that are in development going on. Starting all the way at Fort Point, carrying along A Street, all the way down Dorchester Ave towards Andrew Station. And we're at a really exciting both place as well as point in time to deliver a certain product to the market. So what we saw was in that area, there are plenty of condo options for sale product. Much of the product that's starting to come online along Broadway and even carrying a little bit down towards where our project is tend to be some larger unit sizes. So often things are 1,000 square foot plus, 1,200 square foot, you name it. And at market prices today, that puts you into a pretty big number for a buyer. What we wanted to deliver was a product that for the kind of younger, still reasonably affluent buyer, probably with a job in one of the industries that might be taking over space nearby our project soon enough, that they could afford as a buyer and not just a renter. And so that pointed us to something that was a little bit smaller, 700 square foot average size of unit in the Freeport. Again, at market prices today. And I would be remiss without saying they're all for sale today if anybody wants to reach out. But, even let alone a year or 2 years from now, when we start more serious marketing of the property, you're sub $1 million price point, which is maybe mentally a hurdle, certainly financially a hurdle for many people. And we just feel like it's the right, style of living for the type of individual we're going after. So could be somebody in tech, life sciences, you name it, wants to live in the city, not just temporarily, but probably for a little bit of longer haul, wants commutability, so access to T stations, which we're very close to 2 of them, may very well turn into walkability as we look at some of the projects coming online that are going to deliver office space, whether it's some of the purchases of the Gillette properties, or some of the life sciences lab space that's been proposed, right nearby in the area. We think you're hitting that kind of younger buyer, still affluent, but, needs to hit a certain price point, to be able to afford it. And again, we've also seen that in terms of market sales where smaller units have been moving faster. That's just data in the market. So we look at a lot of that data and think long and hard about it. So we actually proactively made the change. The project was approved as apartment for rent. We changed that to condos just a couple of months ago. So that was another one of the steps we took. And I'd say we've spent a lot of time talking about the buyers and the product and all of that, but it's not lost on us what a development means to the community either. And I think the community there has been very pro-development in general, but much more supportive of ownership of product there. They love having people that are going to be there invested as part of the community for potentially a longer time frame. And so as we did our work and talked to the community there, we found them even more receptive to a for-sale product.
So when you're speaking about the younger buyers, I actually saw a statistic on the South Boston population that between 2000 and 2015, the amount of 25 to 34-year-olds rose from 24% to 37%. So I think that really speaks to what you're talking about with the smaller unit sizes.
That's right. And people are living in the city a little bit longer on average. Again, I think our general feeling, and we're, most of us at Navem are probably on the upper end of that demographic, and but are seeing that people are living a little bit long in the city. They want the commutability into work. They're willing to put up with a little bit less space, but if it's designed well, and they have the amenities, whether it's literally in the building or very close by, to stay longer, they want to, because gone are the days of wanting a lengthy drive into a suburban destination.
So Dartagnan, that brings us to the amenities and the finishes of the building. What is this buyer pool looking for and that you're adding to the project?
Yeah, so I think playing off what Pat said and kind of honing in on the unit size, I think where we have to get creative as architects is, can we take a smaller footprint and really design it to maximize beyond kind of typical spaces, say a studio may have? Can we create a more specialized design? So, for example, in a studio, you're not sleeping in the main space looking at your kitchen, right? So the way we can lay the unit out, maybe more creatively, have kind of a sleeping nook, even if it's small, 8x8, but kind of removed from the public space, shall we call it, of the unit. From kind of a fundamental space planning, that's something we'll look at in a lot of our, say, one-bedroom units where we find a couple moving into it. Instead of just having, say, a living and a bedroom beyond kind of the kitchen and the core, we'll also create what we call kind of a touchdown pad. So it's an in-between space that you could set up 4 or 5 feet, have a home kind of laptop or workstation. So if you're a couple, your wife wants to sleep in the bedroom, you don't necessarily want to set up on a couch in the living room. You'll actually have a nice dedicated spot to go catch up on some work. You may have a printer stored in there, and it kind of helps you get a sense of a larger place in a smaller setting. So that's really kind of from a layout perspective. In terms of the actual aesthetic palette, it's still early on. I think what we're seeing a lot of buyers respond to is kind of a cleaner, more modern palette. We're seeing a big shift in kind of the darker floors to maybe a lighter mid-tone, wide plank, very clean, refined millwork details. So instead of more traditional kind of crown molding, we have kind of an extruded reveal and kind of a flat stock detail. You still get a nice refinement in shadow lines and stuff, but it isn't kind of a very traditional take of a typical crown molding. So we'll look at stuff like that and how we can play up using a set of components to really create something that's a lighter area, more welcoming. Again, kind of, balancing off the size of the units, trying to keep it a lighter area, more inviting. And the nice thing about this building is it does have quite a substantial amount of window-to-wall ratio. So I think inherently, because it's got four-sided exposure and it's not a kind of a typical residential building bar block, it has a nice shape to it, kind of more of a horseshoe shape. We're going to play off a lot of the natural light that should hit this building.
And on the amenities side too, one of the things that we should mention is just we're seeing these types of buyers more and more comfortable with kind of living and operating in a community and a community set of spaces in the building. And so we're sitting in the middle of a co-working space here right now, recording this. That same phenomenon is going on in real estate, residential real estate. There are certainly things that are as extreme as co-living, which is not what we're talking about. But you do find that people are utilizing the other spaces in the building, whether that's the lobby area, where here we have a large lobby area and some outdoor space there. We have a large roof deck, which will be open to residents, and internal spaces, whether they be lounges, gyms, you name it. People are extending their what might be, thought of as a smaller unit into accessibility into lots of square footage throughout the rest of the building.
So on the corner of Dorchester and B Street, we actually have a very nicely positioned anchor, we'll say almost anchor amenity for the building, even though it's for the community in general. It's going to be a pretty large restaurant that will play off of the kind of courtyard that's set up in the building, but also tied directly into the neighborhood. So what we're seeing in some of these buildings, just given the urban context, is by even having an anchor restaurant in the building, that inherently becomes a nice amenity for residents as well, because a lot of them will be designed, or we've even designed with like a little cafe. So in the morning on the way to work, you can pop down, buy a coffee, head out. Those help enrich kind of the experience of condo owners.
Definitely. So let's talk about the commercial space a little bit more. You have the restaurant space, and I believe there's two other spaces.
That's right. Yeah, I think we're going into this with actually the good fortune of having two of the three retail spaces already spoken for going into it. One of the spaces will be, there's an existing martial arts studio that is on site today. It's a great part of the community. They have a great membership base and great ownership. They're going to be returning to the building in a new and refreshed space, and so we think of that as kind of an exciting bridge where we hope that customer base stays with them and comes back and becomes a part of the community of the building. And then we hope to add resident participation to that space as well. So it's a nice kind of fitness space outside the internal amenities in the building that they could utilize. We also have a national rental car company that is signed on for a lease in one of the other retail spaces. Also incredibly exciting for us and the residents, because that offers sort of short-term car rental options, by the day, by the hour even, to the residents, and cars will be on demand. They'll be parked there. So, residents can use that in lieu of owning a car themselves. And we actually anticipate probably many residents will choose not to have a car. And lastly, we have the restaurant space, which we haven't defined a tenant there yet, but we'd like to use that again as a quasi-amenity to the building, where they might even offer service into the units, but certainly create a space that residents will access for maybe weekly meals, morning coffee, you name it, and then also add to the community by drawing folks in.
So you touched on the rental car place.
Yes.
And obviously we have to talk about parking in South.
Sure. Yeah.
So how many spaces are included in the project? Sure.
We're finalizing our exact parking layout now. And so we are approved with up to 120 parking spaces. It's been an interesting dialogue with the city since we closed, where they're actually looking to reduce parking in many areas. If if you can believe that. So for us, the balance is that what is the city desire? What do our buyers and residents really need in terms of parking utilization there and the retail space as well? And then what does that all translate to in terms of cost and what we can offer in terms of a product at a certain price point? But there'll be a pretty meaningful. I don't know if it'll be 120 spaces, but it's going to be a pretty large parking facility there. That hopefully for all the residents that want a car, we'll have a space for them, and then maybe even some additional parking. But again, I think our target demographic, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a very large proportion of buyers who don't want to have a car at all in that location, given the walkability and commutability with the T.
So have you guys run into any challenges so far with design or, with upcoming construction beginning?
Well, I'd say for us, no challenges other than the usual. I mean, I think the one thing, we always think about is just, it's hard to know how the project evolves in the next, couple of years as we build it. The neighborhood will evolve, construction costs will evolve, tenant desires will evolve, and our job at the center of all of it is just to constantly stay on top of it, which we do. So we're constantly talking to the other developers in the neighborhood. We know all our neighbors very well. We're pretty excited and happy about who all our neighbors will be in that area on the developer side and builder side. And so we're staying afoot with what they're doing, making sure the product we deliver is commensurate with what they're delivering. We're looking at other projects citywide. Again, we're involved in a number of other projects, as well as our advisors on the project, and just making sure we're constantly making updates to that, and similar on sort of the cost and building side. Nothing unanticipated so far, but I can guarantee you something will pop up in the next 18 months that will be unforeseen, and we just do our best to kind of stay on top of those things and plan around them as best we can.
Yeah.
So.
And I think from a constructability point of view, having, again, done next door, which I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of understanding that went into kind of the technical execution of that, being adjacent right to the Hull Road. So, we're able to kind of draw on the set of experiences there, the engineers that we worked with, to pull them in very early on to the team so that we can kind of design for that circumstance.
So let's talk about the timeline for construction. I believe you mentioned earlier you're starting demo in the next couple of weeks.
Sure. Yes. As I mentioned, we've had a great relationship with the current tenant there, and we've been kind of accommodating the move of his business out of the facility, and he'll be out very shortly here. And we are lined up to start meaningful work, site work, and demolition this summer, with construction to immediately follow. Again, it's taken a lot of planning and thought over the last 6 months since we closed to get to this point, but we're ready to be off to the races. And we anticipate a roughly 18-month timeline to do the full construction from today to deliver units in early 2021.
I also wanted to ask about the name change and how you came up with the new name, the Freeport.
Sure. The Freeport South Boston is the new name. I think when we looked at it again, the name might seem simple, but it does help define the product. Even initially, this is an interesting project where the whole concept evolved from the existing business that's there. So the owner's business is a ship supply and a boat supply company, which is in fact a chandlery, which is the original name of the building. The building is designed to look sort of like a boat in its shape and form, and so there's very much a hint of that nautical theme to it. And first of all, we love all of that because we love honoring that history of what's been there for decades in terms of the existing owner's business, the prior owner's business, and just history of the neighborhood. We did want to freshen it up, and partly from our own standpoint of defining it as our project and product, that was part of the name change, but also providing something that kept that spirit, but had something a little bit more modern sounding to it. And similar to how I described, we're not smart enough to make these name changes ourselves. We just picked the right people. It was actually our lead investor on the project who came up with the name. And he is actually a great marketer and has sold many units himself in the past. And when we were all sitting around the table and heard it, we thought that's probably the one. And we tested it as well with kind of the right demographic, and it felt like something that worked well, wasn't trademarked, and so we're gonna create kind of the whole product concept focused around that name now.
So, Pat, this is a bigger project for your firm. How did you decide that this was something that you wanted to move forward with?
Sure. Everything we do, we start with the investor lens and mindset. We do that because we put our own money into every project. In a project like this, we can only put so much in, but we have other investors that, fundamentally we're stewards of their money, and we understand what their objectives are, both in terms of what types of buildings they want to create and product they want to create, as well as financial metrics. And so for us, this was sort of a great nexus of a neighborhood we'd done a tremendous amount of work on to understand what product would sell, to understand how much development is going to continue to go on and create an exciting environment for us to build this building in. We have advisors on the architectural side, on the construction side, that provided inputs into costing and we're constantly fine tuning that. And we sort of put that all together in our underwriting process, and it fit at least actually a couple of our investors' objectives very, very well. And so that's really our focus, is making sure our investors are happy. That all stems from creating great product that either sells or rents well, in the very specific micro location and market that it's in, and managing the heck out of the building process and making sure we fine-tune costs and appropriately manage cost wherever we can to both deliver great product, but then, hit the kind of financial returns we need. So this was a great location for us, and, it's in markets we live and breathe. And so we sort of view it as something we can have our hands on every day and manage towards a great outcome.
All right, so as we wrap up here, I just wanted to ask you guys, beyond this project, where do you kind of see your business growing in the next couple of years? Dartagnan?
Yeah, no, thanks. It's been great being here. I think we're seeing a nice shift kind of into the larger multifamily design and implementation from kind of the ground up stance for our firm. So we are helping a lot of developers in the market evaluate parcels of land that do come up. Again, I think Pat and others have experienced kind of the land costs behind it. One thing our firm I think does pretty well is we can take a parcel of land just based on our knowledge going through the zoning process, be able to very quickly help you evaluate maybe potentially how large a building you can get, so our developer clients can kind of back into their pro formas. We do kind of have that developer's mindset when we design a project, beyond kind of the aesthetic goals. And so I think for us, we're seeing that play out nicely, where we are getting some, nice calls to do some larger projects, which has been, a great evolution for us.
Exciting. And Pat?
We'd hope this project is the first of many of its size, and maybe a little larger, plus or minus for Navem. We intend to make Boston our core market for the long term. We all live here. So I live within maybe a quarter mile of 270 Dot Ave, so I'm a resident and neighbor as well. And so I want something that's going to be additive for the life of the building to stand there, and something that will reference, well for Navem in the market, for people who are happy with the product, for investors to get a great return. And we hope to expand that business along a number of other projects. We're actively looking at a handful of other things in South Boston right now. But we also have projects in other great markets in all of Boston. So we've got East Boston is another key market for us. We've got projects in Cambridge and the South End. We have things extending as far out as Melrose, where we have a project. And really, we do the same thing everywhere that we would do for this one, which is start with that great investor mindset, make really smart decisions about the purchase, and then manage the project well throughout the life cycle. And our feeling is, based on seeing other developers do it, if you do that well, it creates a long runway of what hopefully will be delivering more of these buildings, to the Boston area and beyond.
Excellent. Well, I think we all can't wait to see the Freeport. And thank you guys so much for joining us here on The Big Dig.
Thanks for having us.
Yes. And now here is Kevin Caulfield with the Caulfield Market Update.
In the first quarter of 2019, the median sales price was $746,000, which is down 6.6% year over year from 2018. However, the median price per square foot was up year over year 4.7% to $686 a square foot. In terms of availability, inventory levels were up in Q1 2019 11.5%, and average days on market have increased, but are still only at an average of 39 days. People want to be able to see, touch, and feel the finish in these units before they go out and buy them. And I think it's really tough to sell pre-construction units right now unless you've got a great sales center or you've got an amazing product at a really hot price point. If you've got 2 beds or 2+ beds for $1 million right now, those are going to sit until people can see them. And we're seeing in a lot of cases, some people aren't even putting them on the market because it's not worth it until there's really something there to see. Like a $500,000 to $700,000 new construction unit, those things will fly because they're really hard to find. The other reason they're hard to find is because, most people are building bigger units now. There's a lot of demand. I think there's a lot of demand for 1 bedrooms, just like I said, because that inventory there's not a lot of people that have been building it. It seems like the bigger units have been the sweet spot, but I would say, we're saturated with 2-bed, 2 baths with parking for over $1 million in South Boston right now. There's just a lot of things for people to look through. I think that price point now, for the units that seem to be moving quickly are more in that $850 to $900, $925. Like that product sells when you push up towards $1 million. There's just a lot more. There's a lot more inventory for people to sift through, so things are taking a little bit long to get absorbed at those numbers. I think the amenities definitely come into play with some of these buildings. Look, people want club rooms, some outdoor space, maybe some common grills, potentially a gym or bike storage. All of those things play in to people's decision-making process, and I think it's all, you're selling a lifestyle there. And so I think the more amenities you can offer that caters to someone's lifestyle, the easier the units become to sell.
Thank you for listening to The Big Dig. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, or SoundCloud for all the latest episodes, and be sure to check out BLDUP.com for the latest real estate development and CRE news. Also visit NAIOPMA.org, that's NAIOPMA.org, to learn about joining the leading commercial real estate association in the Boston area.